The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Well, glad you could join us. Bill Martinez here. Great to have you for the ride. Got lots to talk about. I'll tell you, before Doge and Elon Musk, there was Open the Books for over 20 years. John Hart, who's now the CEO of Open the Books, Adam Andrzejewski before that, as you may recall. And they brought the receipts constantly to the American people. But thank God now with Elon Musk and Doge, the people are listening and beginning to pay attention as to what's happening with their government, that fraud and waste isn't something of a myth or just something that we suspected, but it's clear fraud and waste exists in our government. Though many, many years ago, there have been many politicians, particularly, you might say the founding father for Open the Books, Senator Tom Coburn, which we long respected for his efforts to hold our government accountable and to point out annually the government waste. But look, we got to stop talking about it and do something about it, especially in light of, where we find ourselves today, $37 trillion in debt. The interest payment alone is now exceeding the cost of our military budget. Seriously. I mean, this is really a national security issue, ladies and gentlemen. And no matter what people want to say about Doge and Elon Musk, whether it's destroy his property or destroy Teslas around the country. I mean, he is doing an incredible service, not to mention the fact that there's threats on his life. Can you imagine? I mean, here we got two people in particular, Donald Trump and Elon Musk, and we'll use them in the same sentence, with, threats on their lives, as if Donald Trump hasn't had a lot already. But, there is a reason, as one of our guests today, Ken Abramowitz, we spoke with him earlier, called the red, blues, and greens. And that's the sentiment. We've got reds, blues, and greens, a part of our country within that say they're American citizens, but they really don't care about America. They don't care about the Constitution. They don't care about you and me. They only care about themselves. In fact, this weekend, I happen to be in West Palm Beach. Most of you know, I'm in Florida, based in Florida on the East Coast, about 40 minutes away from West Palm, and had to go in for a trip, and was there by the mall, and there, on the streets, there were protesters. And of course, these are all anti-Trump, anti-American protesters. They think they're American. I find it quite curious that they can tell you very easily what they hate, what they don't like, but they don't tell you, okay, so, all right, so you don't like the idea of Elon Musk, looking into our government and demonstrating and bringing the receipts of the government waste. Okay, so you don't like that. I get that. You've made that real clear. But what do you like? What is your suggestion? What is your solution to the government fraud and waste that is taking place? What's your solution to elected officials earning, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, millions upon millions of dollars? I mean, what they have in their bank accounts, amazing. I mean, they start out where they make about $174,000. I'm talking about, Congress, about $174,000 a year. And too many of them end up with millions upon millions of dollars. Infamous, of course, is Nancy Pelosi, well over 30. Some have estimated as much as $60 million. And like what? Insider trading didn't take place. I mean, we know that in some cases that there's a clear abuse there. But of course, the way she talks about it is like, no, it doesn't happen. So shut up, leave me alone. Oh, well, unfortunately, I mean, you're not going to get the truth out of somebody who is lying and cheating. Okay. You have to catch them. You have to investigate. And because it's not like all of a sudden, oh, come on, Nancy, let's be honest. Tell us the truth. No, it ain't going to happen. The cons don't give up the con. They hang in there to the bitter end. And they keep lying through their teeth. That's what they do. And this is what Pelosi and the others are doing. I mean, it's amazing. I've got something across my desk here in the last couple of weeks about, the kind of money that some of these politicians are making. Okay, this is reported. Okay, you can check this out yourself. Ilhan Omar, for example, who entered Congress on public assistance. Okay, she has now $28 million in stock in her war chest. Amy Klobuchar, $120,000 in debt. She's now worth nearly $200 million. Okay, this is on a job, $174,000. How does that happen? Okay, I mean, there must be something incredible. I mean, the stock research and investors that Congress has is real special because they can make this kind of money. Raphael Warnock, for example, who went from a one-bedroom apartment in Atlanta to a $6 million brownstone in D.C. AOC, by the way, because people are always curious about what she's up to. And of course, we know that she was a broke bartender. Her net worth now, $29 million in less than 6 years, again, on a salary of $174,000 a year. With us right now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to bring on to the show the CEO of Open the Books, John Hart. John, welcome. Good to have you with us. How you been?
Thanks, Bill. It's great to be on again. I've been very well.
Well, excellent. Well, I was just going down this list of the money that some of these Congress people have in their bank accounts on $174,000 a year. I think we need new brokers, new advice on how to invest our money, John, because they can leverage $174,000 a year to multiple millions of dollars.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, there's been a lot of chatter about with all the tariffs and changes going through. There may have been some insider trading during all that as well. So
you think may have been?
Yeah, maybe. We'll see.
Yeah, right. But like I was telling the audience, John, it's not like all of a sudden Nancy Pelosi, oh, you got me, I confess, or the rest of them. No, it's kind of like I always remind everybody what Dinesh D'Souza said in his experience when he went to jail and having some time with the convicts there. He says, Bill, my big takeaway is the cons never give up the con.
Yeah. Yes, that is sadly true.
Yeah. Well, lots to talk about. And as you mentioned, with Doge causing a lot of brain damage for people that don't want, they just don't want the American people to find out. It's okay if you suspect it, but as long as you can't prove it and you can't really bring some receipts. But the fact of the matter is Open the Books now for over 20 years, Open the Books has been bringing the receipts. And people have just chosen, I guess, to ignore it and put up with it until now. They're looking at $37 trillion in debt, interest payments surpassing that of our military budget. This is a national security issue, and we just can't ignore it any longer, John Hart.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Bill. Look, I had the chance to testify earlier this month to the DOGE subcommittee, and the topic was the federal real estate portfolio. So we have, the federal government has enacted this policy of letting people work remote, and now the Trump administration is trying to fix that. But you can't both allow people to work remotely and then spend billions of dollars on buildings that no one's using.
Yeah.
So one of the byproducts of this, one of the sort of symptoms, if you will, of this disease of too much government is the federal real estate portfolio and the amount we've spent on furniture. Mm-hmm. So we did a study, Bill. We looked at just the expenditures of furniture, and we found $4.6 billion of decorating and redecorating the administrative state. Now, to put that in perspective, so furniture is, when I testified, I talked about the cost of furniture is literally a kitchen table issue, because everybody can relate to the cost of furniture. So for that amount of money, you could buy, for $4.6 billion, you could provide 9.2 million American families with a modest $500 kitchen table. Mm-hmm. So it's a lot of money. And, we found everything from, the State Department spent $1.4 million on artwork for various embassies, $200,000 to produce a couple of custom pieces of abstract art. We found that at the embassy in Islamabad, they spend $120,000 on Ethan Allen recliners. And during the COVID,
Is that the recliner that you put the quarter in and it vibrates too?
Yeah. I don't think it's quite. That would have been a little bit more. So you could.
Yeah,
I guess they were trying to be frugal, Bill. So
yes.
Yeah. And it's astonishing that even during the COVID, the height of the COVID emergency, when they were encouraging people to work remotely and from Zoom, agencies still spent $3.3 billion on furniture. And for what purpose? It doesn't make any sense.
You're just furnishing an empty building.
That's right. Yeah, and one of the best ones that they held up a poster for during the hearing is that the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, they bought solar powered picnic tables.
Oh, I love that. Yes,
that included charging ports.
Yeah,
and these picnic tables, they actually violated the social distancing guidelines that Anthony Fauci put forward. So there's just a lot of ridiculous spending that's going on within the federal agencies. But it really gets to the reason this hearing was important, Bill, is because one of the things I talked about too is that this is a 100-year project where the progressive left has been trying to expand the administrative state. And in my opening comments, I talked about the administrative state, and then the Democrats said, what is your agenda? It's like, well, my agenda is pro-freedom. I want to. Every dollar saved in Washington is a dream realized somewhere in America. And that when we, instead of growing federal agencies, we ought to be focused on growing your agency and your capacity to pursue happiness on your terms with your resources. Right. And so we've spent, billions and billions of dollars on federal agencies. And one of the byproducts of that is this lavish, expensive, totally unnecessary, body of furniture. And it's the high cost of decorating and redecorating the administrative state.
Yeah. Well, it's totally irresponsible to its constituency. I mean, this is disgusting. And as you said, the whole purpose of our Constitution was to ensure freedom. And with every investment or expense that the government takes on, it has to be focused on, does it allow us to enjoy more freedom or less freedom? When you become more indebted, well, then that's real easy. You don't have to you don't need, financial econ experts to come in and do some sort of forensic study on it. That it chokes off freedom, right, John?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And look, it's important to even, let's step back and think about the Declaration of Independence, right? The text of that described this concept, if you remember political science class, the social contract theory.
Yes,
and
exactly.
The idea is that as taxpayers, and this is important to think about in the wake of tax day, is that we give up a little bit of our freedom and we give it to the government, and the quote social contract is, in exchange for us surrendering some of our resources and freedom, we get back a net gain of freedom because we fund a government that provides for a national defense, that provides minimal regulation of interstate commerce. And that's really about the only two things the federal government was supposed to do in the enumerated powers, is provide for the national defense. There's an argument to make for a Treasury Department, Justice Department, Defense, as I mentioned, State Department, and maybe some interstate commerce, but very, very limited.
Yeah.
And we've grown way beyond that. So most of the dollars we spend we lose freedom. We're handing our freedom to Washington, and they're squandering it on objects of their benevolence and this counterfeit compassion agenda, where they're trying to help us by providing programs and services, but they're really making it more difficult for us to live the lives and pursue our happiness and our dreams on our terms.
Well, the key word that you used was minimal. That's what our founding fathers had envisioned, a minimal amount of government. But government being what it is, it's like, I remember when I was a kid growing up, the scariest movie I ever saw was The Blob. You remember The Blob?
Oh, yeah.
You might be a little bit too young for it. But anyway, The Blob. And it just came in and chewed up everything. And this is the administrative state. It's of its own desire, its own level of growth, and it just keeps growing massively, and has convinced its constituent. Of course, they've really bought and sold a a level of constituents, probably maybe you could say 30-40% of the country is in that. They're locked into it. They depend on the teat of the administrative state. And so anytime that is threatened, of course, they play that card, and it's been very successful for them for over 100 years, John.
Yeah. And there's a kind of an alliance between, I would say, the group that wants the dependency state to continue, but then there's the class of elites that prefer to virtue signal as opposed to pursuing actual virtue.
Yeah.
And there's a quote that I used during this hearing, a guy named Herbert Crowley, who is one of the kind of the godfathers of the modern progressive movement. He wrote and dreamed of actually creating and managing this complex new world of the early 20th century, the 1910s. He wanted to manage it with a managerial class. The belief was that if we could create this sort of legion of experts, they would enable us to solve problems that previous generations couldn't solve. Now, the founders saw this coming, which is why they created a limited government with checks and balances, because they studied not just 100 years, they looked back at the past 2,400 years of political history. So they had a very deep and broad breadth of history that they drew from. But Crowley believed in direct quote from him, as increasing control over property in the public interest. And so he would have been thrilled to see how the administrative state has grown. And that's really the kind of the fight that we're involved in. I think your listeners are obviously in tune with that, but we need to get members of Congress more engaged and to make some of these changes permanent. So it's fantastic to have DOGE, to have executive orders, but we really need members of Congress to step up and enact laws that enact durable changes that reimagine the federal government in accordance with what the founders designed. And it's not just a demolition project. When you have a bad upgrade to a house or a property, sometimes you have to knock out walls. You've got to get the sledgehammer out. So there's definitely a role for the sledgehammer. But fundamentally, this is not a demolition project. This is a restoration project. It's about restoring the founders' vision of freedom and limited government. Well, you're putting government back within its boundaries.
But you're exactly right. I mean, the tools that have to be used are the right tools for the right job. And we need to understand what is the job at hand. I think a growing number of Americans understand that, but they have to understand also that they need to come and participate in this remodeling proposition that is before us, that we cannot sit there and rely on the elected officials to do this, because you have to remember, and this is critical, that the elected officials are the ones that got us in this mess.
That's right. That's right.
And so we just can't just say, hey, you guys go ahead, we're going to trust you to fix it up. I mean, we need to be grateful, first of all, that you've got the likes of Donald Trump and Elon Musk there, on our side, on the side of the Constitution. And you have to be focused on the mission in such a way that this small, loud percentage of people, and it's a small percentage of people, but they're loud, and they seem like anything that is loud seems like it's bigger than it is. But it really, at the end of the day, is not as substantive in every beneficial aspect of the meaning of it. They're not as substantive as you think they may be.
Yeah, and one of the things that Elon has said that it's really, really valuable is he said, look, we're gonna be really aggressive, but we're gonna make mistakes, and we want to know what we need to do better. And that's what a great model of leadership is, that most people just want to get pats on the back constantly. Right. But he's secure enough in his success, as he well should be, that he's really trying to do the best thing. And so that's why we continue to provide oversight, provide information, because we believe that they really want to do the right thing. They want to do the best thing for taxpayers.
Yes.
And one of the things that we've done concurrently as DOGE is doing its work is we did a study on all of the federal agencies. So there's something called the Federal Register that lists 441 federal agencies. And the first thing we found is 75 of those didn't actually exist but they were listed because of poor record keeping. Now, of the ones that we've
are they getting money?
No, they're not. Some are, but most are not. They're like zombie agencies.
Okay.
But there's actually this, what's so crazy about the federal government is there's an office that employs people to update this site, but they didn't update it, which is another problem. That's indicative of how the federal government operates.
Yeah.
So you really have to look and dig to find out what's happening. But what we did find is a really clear pattern that really the number of personnel has been relatively stagnant, which is surprising. We thought there would be more of an increase, but it was relatively stable since 2000. But we found that the spending on federal agencies went up almost 400%. So in other words, the line of employees was relatively flat, but spending went up like that. And a good example is
why the money? Why the increase, John?
That's a great question. To do more good things, to do more things it's to finance the administrative state and this idea of counterfeit compassion and this virtue signaling of it. For example, at the Department of Education, headcounts, the staff count increased by about 14%, but the spending increased 749%, which is astonishing. At FEMA, there was a significant growth in headcount of 290%, but the spending swelled by over 2,000%.
So are these all overhead expenses? I mean, where you get these administrators because they're so wonderful and elite that we need to pay them more money. Is that where that money's going?
That's some of it. Yeah. So some of it has gone to increase staff salary. And there's subcontracting where the headcount growth needs an asterisk because some of that has been outsourced to other subcontractors, but not all of it. Most of it literally is just that blob that you talked about earlier. It's just the ever expanding growth of agency programs to do more, quote, good things for people. But that's what we've got to reverse. And when we were going after earmarks when I worked for Coburn, is members of Congress would always argue, well, I have the right to send this money back to my state. I don't want the federal bureaucrats to manage it. And our response was always, well, the effective member is not the member who sends money back to the district. The effective member is the one who keeps money from leaving the district.
Yes.
Because we should trust individual families and taxpayers and small businesses to allocate those scarce resources better than members of Congress. And that's the common sense answer that resonates profoundly with taxpayers. And
because the goal, John, is in conflict. Because in Congress, their number one job is to get reelected. That has nothing to do with managing, as you say, the resources that are necessary to keep the state going and to take care of the people in the state, because they don't care about getting reelected.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a conflict in mission just to begin with.
Right. And I think, I think when taxpayers go to the ballot box, the one question they should ask themselves is the person who's running, are they going to get a promotion from this job or a demotion? Mm-hmm. And you should always try to elect the people that are going to get a demotion.
Yes.
Elon Musk took a demotion to do what he's doing with Doge. And Tom Coburn took a demotion. He was a very successful doctor, businessman. Right. He made a lot less working in Congress than what he was doing. The governor of Oklahoma is a good friend. He's a very successful businessman. Took a demotion to run for governor, be governor of Oklahoma. So there are really good people all over the country who are doing it for the right reasons.
Right.
And so one of the wonderful things about our system is there's a lot to be frustrated about and a lot that we need to fix. But there is an openness to our political process that hasn't existed before in our history, where because of social media, because of your ability, your show and other shows where you can have guests who talk about real issues,
right,
you can elevate these ideas and give people the information they need to be good citizens. And the barriers of entry have gotten lower and lower, which again, it puts the responsibility back on citizens, where it's our job to be informed, to be involved, to ask the right questions, and then to elect the right people, and then to hold them accountable. And so we're trying to create that virtuous cycle of truth and transparency.
Exactly. Well, this is where people need to understand the era of the low information voter has got to end. and especially where we are right now, we've got a precious opportunity. Thank God for the last election, Donald Trump surviving an assassin's bullet, and God only knows how many other assassin attempts on his life. And here it is. We've got to make the most of this opportunity if we're going to get this country back on track. Because meanwhile, the Democrats are lost. I mean, you would think, especially with so many of these 80-20 issues, John, whether it has to do with the border, immigration, national security, spending, this sort of thing, that the Democrats, yes, they got their butts kicked in 2024, but they're lost. And all they can talk about is how much they hate Elon Musk and Donald Trump and threaten the Constitution even further. Because could you imagine, number one, if they were successful, if that kid was successful in taking out the president, where we'd be right now? Yeah. Or even still, the attempts haven't stopped. They're still, the FBI and CIA are discovering, it's almost on a monthly basis, new attempts to assassinate this president and Donald Trump. And then you read some information here about, people's attitude about it. I mean, it's unconscionable that citizens of the United States have no problem. In fact, it's almost like they're cheering on the assassination of the president of the United States. This is sick.
Yeah, it's very, very dark. Yeah, and it isn't hard to imagine a time just five years ago. We just did a report too on how much Anthony Fauci and his wife were enriched.
I was going to bring that up. Yeah, and I want to get into that because it was, the big report this morning was how the White House had adjusted, the website to finally declare what we all knew is that, it was the Wuhan virus, right?
Right. Yeah. And there was, again, 5 years ago, Anthony Fauci just decided to declare what the quote, the science was. And whenever politicians talk about, when they talk about the science as opposed to science, they're talking about ideology masquerading as science.
Right.
And so we now know that there are claims that Anthony Fauci made that good people on all sides questioned. I said, well, this doesn't make sense. This seems like came from a lab, and there were questions about the social distancing, about whether the virus can be transmitted if you have the vaccine. A lot of legitimate debate was censored and silenced because it violated what Anthony Fauci and the government experts said.
Exactly. And social media platforms as well, John. Yeah. It was all one big, huge cabal.
It should never happen in a free society. Right. We should never tolerate authoritarianism, regardless of whose side it is. That is contrary to what the founders, it's contrary to what people died for to protect.
Exactly.
And it's unconscionable. And so we're going to expose that and hold them accountable for that.
Well, you went deep into it, and you demonstrated. I mean, we were talking earlier about these elected officials and the money that they made. You brought the receipts on the income that suddenly you start looking at this and go, this doesn't look good.
Yeah. And so his household got $3.5 million wealthier in the first year after they left office. Now, in the documents that we were able to obtain through different FOIA requests and other ethics documents, they don't provide direct receipts. In other words, they don't say, well, he got it from this speaking event, but there are a lot of awards listed in public speaking events that he did participate in. And so you can kind of put two and two together. But Fauci is not this beleaguered doctor who's unfairly criticized. I mean, he's very wealthy, successful, and he leveraged his celebrity for personal gain, and all while denigrating people that had legitimate questions about COVID that we now know he was wrong about.
Right. And millions of people died because of it, John. Right. And with impunity. I mean, there's no accountability whatsoever. And you have Joe Biden giving him a preemptive pardon, which is unheard of. Who gets a preemptive pardon?
Yeah, and you don't pardon someone who didn't do anything wrong. And
or was convicted, wasn't even convicted, didn't go through a trial. It was just like a just in case, we're going to give you a get out of jail card.
Yeah, just kind of holding him above the law. Yeah, so we need kind of a Truth and Reconciliation Commission on just the COVID issue. And we're within that process right now, where these findings are finally coming out, and we just have to learn from it and never ever go back to where we were. It was a very, very dark chapter, and we need.
But going back to what you said earlier, John, if you don't arrive to the truth, if you don't have the truth, then generations are going to look back in this period of time, and they're going to. It's going to be hard for them to make heads or tails out of what happened here.
Yeah, that's why that's why we're so committed to making sure transparency flows. I have to talk about, transparency is a first principle in a free society.
Yes.
And the founders wrote transparency into the Constitution, and it precedes the Bill of Rights. So it precedes free speech itself. So in the public square, transparency is like oxygen, and we can't speak if we can't breathe.
Exactly.
We have to have this basic information so that. And we're not telling people what to think. We're just believing that people should think. They should be allowed to think. They should be allowed to see the receipts and then make their own determination as to what kind of government they want. And the founders had faith in we the people. They believed that if you let truth and falsity grapple, whoever knew truth to be pinned in a free and open exchange.
Exactly.
That was Milton who wrote that 100 years before the First Amendment was written. That's the tradition that they were in. And so the progressive tradition is very, very shallow. It's like a shallow weed that is very recent. And so the founders in our country they drew from, again, over 2,000 years of political history and successes and failures throughout history of representative government.
Well, we're talking with John Hart, the Chief Executive Officer for Open the Books. John, we're talking about the low information voter. It's like we're hamstrung a bit. And we're crippled, carrying, 30-40% of the constituents here who have not exercised their critical thinking skills. They have been accepting of what they're told instead of what they know. Because even, a big part of our show is saying, look at whoever we're talking to. Today we're talking to John Hart. Hey, don't take our word for it. Yeah. Okay. Research it for yourself. Own your own knowledge. Do not listen to some talking head and some news show or some politicians. Verify, and I don't even say trust and verify. I just say verify.
Yeah. And exactly. Yeah. We, a lot of our work is based on this website called USA Spending. And as I've shared before on your show is when I worked for Coburn, we teamed up with a Democrat, a senator who was really ambitious and bright over 20 years ago named Barack Obama. So Tom Coburn, very conservative senator from Oklahoma, became friends with Barack Obama, progressive liberal senator from Illinois. But they agreed that transparency is a foundational principle. And Democrats they may argue, well, gosh, if people could only see how little we spend on things like foreign aid, maybe they'd support it more. And they believe that if you give people the information, they'll come to conclusions that will be more favorable to their side. And that's what a free society is about, is that when we let the information out, and then I'm not shy about my biases. You're not shy about your bias. We're not trying to manipulate or deceive anybody. We're trying to give people information, and we're direct about what our belief system is. But fundamentally, we trust the system our founders created, of one of transparency. And one where you give people the information they need to hold elected officials accountable, and then you trust that result.
Right. Well, we know by experience, John, that we're better together. I mean, I don't need the same opinion in the same room. One of us is redundant, right? We need somebody of despairing viewpoints that can advance the cause, as long as we understand. And it's been a number of years since both parties have been in step in terms of the mission of what we're trying to accomplish. I can get it that, hey, you may come from it from a lefty point of view. I may come from it on a right side of the point of view spectrum, but together we're ending up in somewhere close in the same zip code. Right now, we're like Venus and Mars here.
Yeah. No, and that's really troubling, because I think, and there's a scriptural principle. I'm sure you've read this: as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another.
Exactly.
And And there's a lot to unpack there, because when you have iron and iron together, you have sparks, you have heat, you have conflict. But the practice of engaging is it sharpens both sides.
Right.
And another way to think of it is, what if you have a pair of scissors, what blade on that pair of scissors is the most important? They're both important.
Yeah.
And so as in a free society, when we're debating, when we're having this conflict of ideas, when we're saying, no, if you give people more information, they're going to want a whole lot less government.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the other point of view that says, well, if you give people all the information they need, they're going to decide that a little bit of government is really the right thing. And in fact, it should do more in these areas. And then we have a fight and argument about that. That makes the country stronger. That's what the founders believe. They believe that give people the information they need, trust them, and make sure that the power is invested in, again, in we the people, that
Right.
it isn't imbalanced and you don't have these unaccountable agencies. That's part of why I'm so critical of the administrative state,
Mm-hmm.
is that it's so hard to hold it accountable, because neither the executive branch or the legislative branch wants to own it. And to
Mm-hmm.
Trump's credit, he's trying to downsize it, and he's getting a lot of flack for it, obviously. But Congress, wherever they're falling short, I see it as more Congress's job. They need to be jealous of their power.
Exactly.
And take the power back. And
Yeah,
Elon Musk is
why would you send it out to regulators and let them do your job? I mean, your job is to codify the law to make sure it's specific. But no, let's just go ahead and make it nebulous. Let the regulators run and these agencies run with it and interpret their own laws and then create laws, amongst themselves. And they weren't even elected.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, and again, back when we were fighting earmarks in the Coburn era, in the Tea Party
Mm-hmm.
era, is the argument, again, we would say, well, the effective member is the one who sends money back to the district. And then to your point about the power of the bureaucrats, is bureaucrats have no power other than the power that Congress gives them. So you can't blame the bureaucrats. If they're doing something you don't like, member of Congress, it is your fault.
Yeah, right.
You gave them that power. You need to take it back, get it back, and then pass a law. And if then the president vetoes that law, then you hold the president accountable. Then you take your case to the voters, so they elect a different president. But right now we have a president. If Congress were to step up and enact some of these laws, I don't think Donald Trump would veto an agency reorganization bill.
Oh, gosh,
I'd
no.
be thrilled to see it happen.
Right.
But again, it's not right to expect him to do that. He's not a member of Congress.
Mm-hmm.
Elon Musk isn't a member of Congress.
Yeah,
the
right.
members of Congress need to step up and do their part,
Right.
and not just let Elon take all the heat.
Well, they need to understand, I guess, and on both sides, and I think the right understands more than the left, certainly, because the left is so emotional that they really cannot open their minds enough to see this. I mean, maybe at some point they may wake up, John, in the middle of the night, 3:00 in the morning, and go, my God, what was I thinking? Because this is so absurd. And it's so obvious that here we are under Joe Biden. We let in millions of people who come in and, they absorb all our resources. They put states in jeopardy and on the verge of bankruptcy, all for, as you said, compassion. This word of compassion is so overused and abused that the left, I believe, they've lost the context of what true compassion really is, John.
Yeah, that's why I call it counterfeit.
Yes.
Counterfeit compassion. It's not real.
No, it's not. And meanwhile, guess who's paying for it? We, the taxpayer. But it goes back to what you were saying earlier. And yes, it's Congress's job, but it's our job. It's we, the people's job, to hold Congress accountable. You cannot keep electing these knuckleheads in. And see, and the thing is, part of what, the fix is in a sense, because, of all the districts that are out there, John, how many are given? They're given to the, they got the blue seats and you got the red seats, and they're all been gerrymandered to, to give you a specific result. And so then we're haggling over what, how many less than 100 seats that, on both sides.
It's that are competitive.
Yes,
sure.
exactly.
Yeah, it's maybe 10%, 15%.
Right.
Where again, we don't want to live in a system where the politicians choose the voters, right? The voters need to choose the politicians, but
right. Well, it's like what's happening with lawfare. They're choosing the judges to give them the end result. Everything is that way. Nobody wants to be able, nobody wants to debate this, especially the left, because they just soon, cancel you, invalidate your opinion so they can move on. Nobody wants to get into this process. As you mentioned, rightfully so, our founding fathers designed this government to operate very deliberately and very slowly. We're not, this isn't a microwave type of government process, right?
Yeah, or just add water. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, actually, just add transparency. Then
yeah,
you have that. Eventually, it's going to work. It's going to take time, though. It's going to take time, but then you get the right result.
So to wrap up, the situation with Fauci, he's got a get out of jail card. He had a preemptive pardon along with several other characters in the Biden administration. And meanwhile, it's been a disaster. The people have suffered for this. And we, the people, need to understand. I think people on the right understand more and more every day, because it's hard, because most people on the right, John, we want to think fairly towards one another. We don't think that people are liars. We don't, that's not our knee-jerk response. We want to believe that people are honorable until they demonstrate different. And we need to call it out for what it is. And that is that we've had, 4 evil years under Biden where people lied to us, people died. You had the left talking about the jeopardy of the Constitution. It was them that put the Constitution in jeopardy, not Donald Trump.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, Fauci left as the highest paid bureaucrat of all time at $480,000 a year.
Wow. Yeah. More than the president of the United States. Go figure, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. How does that happen?
Well, because he's been the high priest, the quote chief doctor. Mm-hmm. But he really represented just a way of thinking that we're trying to move away from, and this sort of class of elite experts that are empowered to micromanage and control American life, is that we need to begin to shift that balance back to we the people and give people the information they need.
Well, and this idea, these elite experts that you talk about, I mean, look at the track record, John. I mean, you might even say, like you say, go back 100 years and you saw this movement that happened, Crowley, in a sense, puts this on paper, puts these ideas down on paper. Woodrow Wilson picks up on it and says, oh, yeah. And then next thing and then, then after that, we get FDR coming in. And then after that, Johnson, and in each increment, the administrative state just kept gobbling up power and control. And here we are, like the proverbial, what do you call it? The proverbial frog in boiling water.
Frog in the pot. Right. Right. Yeah. And I think, one thing that gives me hope is that the really history also includes these kind of eras of backsliding where we forget. We have collective amnesia, but then there are periods of renewal where if you think about, like the Clapham group and William Wilberforce, who led the abolition movement in the UK. So one of the great stories of history is how the small group of highly committed people were the ones that really led the abolition movement. And then, of course, it spread to the US, but that wasn't automatically going to happen. There was no force at work. All of the forces were working against them, but they decided we're all created equal in God's eyes. We're going to lead this abolition movement. And so I think there are movements and can be movements today where we really do restore. I don't think this is a pipe dream at all. I think the founders built into our system the capacity to self-correct and put things back on this course. And that's why the Doge, kind of this moment, is so important. Mm-hmm. And again, not everything has to happen immediately. That's the other thing. We're so impatient. We want, this all needs to be fixed in whatever short period of time Elon Musk is at Doge.
Yeah, and I want to get skinny overnight too, John.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so you're looking pretty good.
Yeah,
but
right.
we want to be in this and for the long term, and never, ever, ever, ever give up.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's not a superficial hope. It's not a pie in the sky hope. It's a kind of just a word of determination and just persistence and believing that the forces of freedom can prevail.
Well, when you talk about Wilberforce and the Reformation movement, uh, it started with an opportunity for people to look to God, because that's where truth resides, as we talked about before. But and I think we have this small window of opportunity in which to be renewed. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, here we are, the day after Easter, a time of renewal and rebirth. Maybe this is it, John. My prayer is for this country, because, wow, can you imagine what this would do to really release the full potential, the God-given potential of 350 million citizens in our country? Whew. I mean, yeah, Donald Trump, his vision for a golden age for America, I'm with him on it, but it starts with a re-embracement of the truth and godly principles, which were embedded in our Constitution. We've only got about 4 minutes left, and I did want to address something else that you had to open the books, and that was Aid for the Ayatollahs. Tell our audience about that.
Yeah, Bill. So one of the things that we've done is we've looked at all of the money that's gone to the Iranian regime, kind of indirectly, that we've facilitated over the years. And what we found is that we've kind of directed about $160 billion to Iran. It's primarily facilitated during the Biden years, and that was by relaxing sanctions and also payouts to pay for the release of Americans who have been imprisoned. And this is really shocking that we've done this. And you have with Iran, Russia, China, and Hamas, you have this new axis of authoritarianism, an axis of evil in the world, where they were really behind October 7th. And so the Trump administration is now, I think, finally putting pressure on Iran and saying, you will not have a nuclear weapon. Now, I hope that they don't have to use military force to get their way, but I don't think he's bluffing. I think when he says Iran will not have a nuclear weapon, Iran has a choice of doing that either peacefully, or they will have that opportunity removed through the use of force, whether that's Israel or the United States. And
does anything in their character tell you that they will surrender that, John?
I don't. Well, I think the survival instinct in human beings is quite intense. So that may be enough, but I'm not particularly hopeful.
Yeah,
that's my honest view.
That's the way I feel. I feel that this is what they know. They know strength. They know power. They're not going, no matter what. And Donald Trump, I mean, wants to do everything he can to avoid, death, more death, and wars. And I respect that. But the Bible also says that there's a time for war and a time for peace. And the way it says that is that you better know the difference. And I think we're at that point, even though, and I respect this president to try to do everything he can to avoid it, but sometimes it's inevitable.
Yeah, we'll see. And look, and a lot of the money too that went to Iran was just through lax. It was non-enforcement of oil sanctions. And exactly. So, but we're talking. It's a huge amount. We just talked earlier about the $4.6 billion in furniture. Well, this is a lot more than that.
Right.
That we allowed to flow to a regime that's barbaric and murderous and was behind the massacre on October 7th. And we just can't allow that to continue.
And the thing is that you saw this happening, John, and they did nothing to preempt it. They could have said, okay, boom, we're going to cut back. We're reinstituting the sanctions and that sort of thing. And for 4 years, it continued to run without any kind of resistance whatsoever.
Yeah. Yeah. And, appeasement is a very, very dangerous thing, is that we, Reagan modeled peace through strength. And I think a lot of folks, President Trump and a lot of people in his administration believe in that as well. And so hopefully we'll get to a good result. But I wish I could be optimistic about avoiding military force, but I'm not particularly optimistic.
I think sometimes, we can be optimistic till the point that reality enters in, and that's okay. I mean, we pray that would not be the case. But I mean, we've had enough death. You think about it. already in Ukraine and Russia and other parts of the world right now. So we don't need another war, although their military industrial complex is licking their chops. John Hart, the CEO of Open the Books. John, again, I cannot thank you enough for all the great work you and the team are doing on behalf of We the People. I want to encourage our audience, those that are watching us and listening to us, that they support Open the Books, because I mean, you guys are, it's not like you're getting hundreds of billions of dollars, that somehow are coming to you to support this effort.
It's a tiny slice of all the numbers I've thrown out today, I can assure you.
Right, exactly. So tell people how they can subscribe and partner with Open the Books.
Yeah, the best thing you do is go to our website and sign up, openthebooks.com. You can also go to our Substack and sign up at both places to get all of our newsletters and material. And we'd be grateful to have your support and have you follow us.
Well, John, again, we're grateful to Open the Books, and it's an honor always to have this time together to get an update on what's going on as we continue to push forward for the truth and to get this country back on track and do something to make it truly efficient. But it requires all hands on deck. We need everybody to be of the same mind and the same purpose to discover the truth and to do away with this inefficiency in our government. After all, hey, look at, ladies and gentlemen, it's your money, right?
That's exactly it. It's your money, it's your future, and it's your kids' future. So,
amen. Well, and the way the government's been spending, it's not just the kids, our grandkids, it's our great-grand. I mean, we're going into generations here, right?
Yeah.
This is crazy. Well, John Hart, again, thank you so much for being with us. Take care. Be blessed. You got it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us and sharing a part of your day. We're grateful for John Hart, the CEO of Open the Books. And as I suggested, go to openthebooks.com and do what you can. Think about supporting the cause here. I mean, they've been doing this for a couple of decades and working on our behalf, and they need our support. And especially right now, we have got to keep the pressure on the inefficiency and the administrative state if we're truly going to get this country back on track. If you're interested in this constitutional government and these first principles that you and I, we took for granted for many years, and we saw what happened in the last couple of decades. It's been a slow and deliberate erosion, and it's been going on, as John mentioned. I mean, you can actually go back over 100 years, and you saw this slow, progressive growth and expansion into the institutions of our government, taking over every institution from our educational system, the governmental process, all these agencies and everything. And here we are all these years later trying to do something about it, but it requires all hands on deck. Again, thank you so much for being with us. I will say to you on this Easter week as it continues, happy Easter to you. May God bless you. May he keep you. May he make his face shine upon you, and may he give you his peace. Take care. God bless.